Okay, I'm getting started here. I hope you guys are all relaxed. Good evening and welcome to the Get Ready class. My name is Sandra Firpo and I'm an emergency services specialist with the San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department. And you may know that back in 2019, the fire departments from 3 cities, Belmont, Foster City, and San Mateo, all got together, merged into one agency, becoming San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department. We have 9 fire stations strategically located in our 3 cities, and we're proud to serve the residents of Belmont, Foster City, and San Mateo. I know many of you are from those 3 cities tonight, and I thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I am just reminders quickly that this is being recorded. Please keep your microphones on mute, but you'll be able to ask questions as we go along. Certainly feel free to use the chat box towards the bottom of your screen, and of course, feel free to take notes. You will be getting some items later, which I will email to you. If we were doing this in normal times, you'd be in a classroom with me and you'd get a folder with a whole bunch of resources. We'll talk about all those resources as we go through the night, and then in the next few days, you'll be receiving them via email. So look for the icons at the bottom of the screen. You're looking for the chat box if there's anything there that you want to pop onto. My colleague, Casey Treadway, happens to be on tonight, and I appreciate her very much for doing so. And she's facilitating and letting in any latecomers and checking out the chat box as well. So she's keeping me honest. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the wonderful place that we live. And we're very fortunate to live here. It's certainly better than some other parts of the country right now as terms of weather. But it's a beautiful place to live. But from time to time, things can change very quickly. And that is one of the things that worries us, doesn't it? So we want to make sure that we do all that we can to be ready, be prepared for ourselves and for our families and for our neighbors. A lot of people think of this as a chore, and it can be. But I think, I'm hoping that what you'll find is from this class, it might make it easier to fit into your lifestyle and not be something that you have to set aside time for. Should be just part of your routine. Disasters that can happen, things that can happen in our area. When you think about things that can happen, these are usually some of the ones that pop up on people's minds. Certainly earthquake, pandemic. One of the things that makes this class unique, and we do the Get Ready class several times a year, but in the last couple of Get Ready classes, what's interesting is that usually I would ask people if they've ever experienced a disaster themselves personally, whether they've been in a hurricane or an earthquake or something. And 1 or 2 people in a class might have had direct disaster experience, if you will. But now we're in a pandemic. It's global. And when it comes to disasters, they tend to affect us 3 ways. Every disaster is unique, but disasters generally affect us in 3 ways. So there's the emotional concept, right? No matter how tough you are, no matter what, it's going to hit you in some way. There's the physical, right? If your house gets damaged, if you get injured or sick, that's the physical part of the disaster. And then there's the financial, right? So many of us have been hit in those 3 ways during this pandemic. So it certainly qualifies as a disaster. So now asking people if they've ever experienced one is moot, because pretty much everyone who's on Earth right now has experienced living through a disaster. And I think that's changed our mindset somewhat. But what you're going to, I think, take away hopefully from this class is that you're not preparing for one thing. Years ago, the concept was get an earthquake kit, be ready for an earthquake, that sort of thing. So you were focused on just earthquake. But this is a disaster preparedness class. And I think we need to look at things as, if I'm prepared, I can face virtually anything. No matter what nature's going to throw at us or what's going to come our way, we're in better shape than we were before, right? And hopefully I'll have you in better shape in a couple of hours than you were just an hour ago. That's the goal. So in any case, we have our natural disasters, we have our technological disasters, and then we have some people who just like to give everybody else a bad day, and man-made types of disasters. What else do we worry about? Anybody want to put something in the chat room? Is there something else that we worry? Should we worry about hurricanes here? Is that one of the things we worry about? We are fortunate that we don't get hurricanes in this area. What about tornadoes? Any concern about tornadoes? Sorry. This was back in 2005, a small tornado. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, but it did do some damage here on the peninsula. So these things can happen. And I'm not telling you this because I want you to stay up at night worried about what could happen. But the fact that you're taking action lowers the stress level immensely, and just, like I said, gets you better prepared to face anything that life is going to throw at us. That's what we're hoping to do. All right, so back in 2017, this has already been 3 years since the Santa Rosa, Sonoma County fires, believe it or not. It's amazing. And all of these fires broke out because the winds were so high. All these fires broke out within hours of each other. And when you have a number of fires in one geographic area, they combine them into what's known as a complex fire. So these are the North Complex fires. The following year, 2018, was the famous Camp Fire. This is the fire that devastated the town of Paradise. And I just wanted to show you this really quickly. This is the day after the fire broke out, so November 9th. So just that's how much the fire had traveled, right? From up here near Pulga past Paradise. That's just in a day. If you take that same map that's on the left and put it over the peninsula on the right, in one day, that's how much burned. So that's a better perspective for us who live here, trying to understand how fast and how devastating this fire certainly was. And we've had, of course, fires since. And what we've learned, unfortunately, is that living in a city doesn't protect us from devastation like this. This is Santa Rosa. So for those of us, especially, we live in San Mateo, we live in Belmont, up in the hills, that's an area that certainly has some concern when it comes to wildfires and living in that close proximity to wildland areas. The other big thing that people tend to worry about, of course, is earthquakes. And I don't know how many of you might have experienced the Loma Prieta earthquake in 1989, but everybody talks about the big one, and unfortunately that wasn't it. This graphic shows us pretty interestingly, if the 1906 Great Quake of San Francisco were to have happened in 89, and we have the current population and the current development of housing and everything, the shaking would have been very intense. It would have been that red that you're seeing on the left side of your screen. Okay. The Loma Prieta quake, in reality, that's the right side of the right side of your screen, which is mostly yellow. So it was considerably less intense than the 06 quake in San Francisco. And neither one of those, I guess, is considered the big one. So we're still waiting, unfortunately. I want to show you this video, if I can make this work. And to do that, I have to stop sharing my screen. So give me, maybe it's going to work. Hold on. The audio doesn't matter. I just want you to take a look. Tell me what you notice. So what struck you about this video? Anything? And you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you like. Everybody's being shy tonight. The one thing that really struck me, yeah, thank you. Quick reaction on the part of the kids. Those kids, as soon as things started shaking, no one said anything. There wasn't any alarm. They just boom, duck, cover, and hold on. They were holding on to the legs of their desks, if you noticed. Why is that? Why were they able to react so quickly and so effectively? Any thoughts on that? It's because kids and schools practice, right? They have drills and do earthquake drills and they practice. We as adults don't do that quite as often, and we think we know what we would do, but we don't actually practice it and develop that muscle memory that these kids demonstrated in that video. So one thing that happens every year, every October 15th, is the Great Shakeout. So it's always on 10/15, October 15th at 10:15 in the morning. And you can develop a team and you can do it with your family, but you don't have to wait till October. But it's fun to do that because it happens to be the largest earthquake drill in the world. But why not have a practice anytime you're with your family and you're hanging out and you go, boom, let's pretend an earthquake's happening right now. What do you do? And see if everybody can duck, cover, and hold on and make it happen. Again, you want it to be muscle memory, right? That's the goal. All right. So I talked a little bit about San Mateo Consolidated, the 3 cities, the 9 stations. At any given time on this shift, for example, in those 9 stations, we have 40 people ready to go. If you were to call 911, our average response time right now is 4 minutes, which is really outstanding. So you're going to get a great deal of response and everything. But if it's something that's a regional disaster, that is not just, your house, they're going to be called in a lot of different directions. And that's why we enjoy developing a culture of preparedness. And this is what you're doing here tonight, to give yourselves some more resiliency, some more self-sufficiency, because they may not be able to get everywhere at once, right? And they're going to have to prioritize the bigger disasters, and we need to take care of the smaller ones. So let's talk a little bit about the hazards in your home. Our home is where we feel safest. It's our palace, right? It's where we need to be at home. But there are some risks and dangers, and we can start minimizing those by being aware of them. So gas lines, for example, right? And we have water heaters, we have maybe space heaters, another thing, shelving, dishes and cabinets, certainly electric shock is a possibility, and of course, fire. All right, so let's go over some of these things and what we can do. So if you have heavy objects, if you have bookshelves, that's fantastic. You want to get those things to be locked onto the studs in the walls. You want things to be strapped in. But other things that you can do, and you can even do this tonight, which is what I love about this photo, is if you look at the photo here of the woman asleep, and what does she have underneath her bed? She has a pair of shoes and a working flashlight in a baggie tied to the headboard leg of her bed. Why? Well, remember the video we just watched, right? That amount of shaking. If you put your shoes and everything nicely and neatly next to your bed, it's going to shake, things are going to fall, they're not going to be handy. But now she knows exactly where they are. She can just reach down and grab them. The number one injury that people experience if an earthquake happens at night, right? So picture yourself, earthquake, you're in bed, jump out of bed, run down the hall, maybe to check on the kids or check on the house, right? And maybe some vases and dishes and pictures off the wall fell down. And of course there's glass and broken things on the floor. Cut up feet. Cut feet is the number one injury if an earthquake happens at night. So you got a pair of shoes, you got a flashlight, you put those on, you're good to go. The key here being protect yourself, your safety first, because then you can help others. Make sense? Just like when you're on a plane and they tell you to put your mask on first and then help others, same idea. Make sure you've got some safety equipment on your feet and on yourself before you go off to help other people. That gummy thing on the bottom here of the bowl is not gum. That's known as museum putty or earthquake putty. So if you have any collectibles or tchotchkes or anything that you have and you want to minimize the possibility of them falling in a quake, if you put this down, this keeps them more solidified to whatever it is they're sitting on, whatever shelf or stand they're on. So that's available. You can also use those if you picture a picture frame, and the picture frame, the corners against the wall. Imagine the shaking that we saw from that video. Those frames would be flapping and falling off the wall. But if you have a little bit of that putty, it keeps them more locked onto the wall and less likely to fall. Again, minimizing, giving yourself as many options as you can in an earthquake. All right, duck, cover, and hold on. Remember holding onto the leg of the table. Why? Again, that shaking, that cover that you have might walk away if you don't hold on to it. All right. And mainly what we're trying to do with the duck, cover, and hold on, because you may not be able to get under a table or under a desk, depending on where you are, is you're mainly taking care of your head and neck and the core, your main core, all your organs, right? So that's where you're ducking, you're protecting the core, and you're protecting your head and your neck. You want to cover this while you're holding on to whatever it is that you're trying to protect yourself with. All right. Now, after a quake, things might get messy. Again, shoes, gloves, anything you have to protect yourself from further injury or making yourself, unable to help others. We always talk about being part of the solution, not part of the problem. If we get injured, certainly not our fault, right? But we want to try to avoid as much as possible to be injured so that we are in the best shape possible to help ourselves and each other. All right. So this is obviously after an earthquake, a lot of things have fallen off. Maybe the cabinets on the top shelf of the kitchen have opened up and all your dishware and glassware have fallen out. I got this one tip from actually a CERT member. We'll talk about CERT in a little bit, which I thought was brilliant. You know those tabs that we use for baby proofing the house or puppy proofing the house, right? That we usually put on the lower shelves. Why not put those on the upper shelf, right? Upper doors, upper cabinets, to keep the doors from opening at all. So that will keep all the dishware and all the glassware from popping out. Certainly less mess to clean up afterwards, but it saves you all the grief and of losing all your glassware and dishware. So there's something to be said about that. So consider that as a tip. All right. What to do after the emergency? And of course, we're calling each other and doing all kinds of things and checking on family, and we will discuss that as well. But if you can please not drive around unless it's absolutely necessary. First of all, power lines might be down, trees might be down, sinkholes might have opened up, and you're hoping that emergency personnel are coming in. So keep the roads as clear as possible is always important. Use your radio to receive latest information. Evacuation is a possibility depending on what the situation may be. So you want to be as informed, receiving as much information as possible. We'll talk about that as the night progresses. And of course, you want to let your family know how you are. So all these things are very important because they lower the temperature. If you know how everybody is, that everyone is okay, you're going to be able to relax a little bit, catch your breath, and focus on whatever decisions have to be made next. So that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming on lowering that temperature and keeping things as calm as possible for ourselves, as well as for the kids and our elderly relatives. Everybody has to take it a step down. So we'll work on that. All right. So it's important that you become familiar with the places where you tend to hang out the most. Obviously your home, your place of work, your school, around your apartment complex, whatever it may be. Walk around and see what are the hazards, both inside and outside of your home. Not that you're going to be able to fix all of them. That's not the issue. The issue is being aware of them. That's half the battle right there. If you're aware of them, there's uneven pavement over here. That tree might be a hazard. It might come down. Can it come down on my home? Or can it come down and knock out the power? Be aware of that, right? All right. And then, of course, things are not going to happen at the convenient time when everybody's sitting around the dinner table and it's the middle of the day. It's going to happen at night. It's going to be when it's raining. It's going to be inconvenient. So we want to have as many options as possible. So flashlights, working batteries, fresh batteries, not using candles, please, and just being aware of what is normal for your home and your area and your neighborhood so that you can recognize when things are not normal. All right. And then taking care of yourself. Like I said, you are the most important one, because if you're not okay, then you can't take care of others. So don't miss out on taking care of yourself when it comes to drinking water and hydrating, eating regularly, taking your medication as usual. All these things are terribly, terribly important. All right. Okay. How many of you have ever had to call 911? Have you ever had that experience? Give me a yes or no. Anyone? So 911 is a fantastic service, right? And we've all come to know it. It's national. We can rely on that. But what most of us have nowadays are cell phones, and we don't have landlines the way we used to. When you call 911 from a landline, the old landlines, I'm not talking about VoIP or anything like that, I'm talking landlines, 90% of the time, the address from which you're calling will pop up on the screen for the dispatchers. That doesn't happen with a cell phone because they have no way of knowing, obviously it's a mobile phone, you're mobile, you're walking around. So never presume they know where you are. First thing you should be telling people on 911 is where you are. Hi, my name is Sandra. I'm calling from San Mateo, and I want to report a fire. Right? So immediately the dispatcher knows what city and what type of emergency it is. I think it's a heart attack. That's a medical emergency. Fire. I'm seeing somebody beating somebody up, law enforcement. They can start immediately dispatching that city's law or fire or medical personnel. Okay, so first thing out of your mouth is what city and what type of emergency, right? Then followed by, of course, the address or anything else, every other information. And they are going to ask you a lot of questions, okay? Answer the questions. Don't worry. Don't think, oh my God, just send somebody already, because they are already dispatching people. The moment you call, they're already determining who they have to dispatch and where they have to send them to. That's already happening. The additional questions that the dispatcher is asking you is so they can better prepare and have a better response from those first responders. So for example, if you call, somebody's passed out, and as you're talking to them, say, well, there might be a gas leak or there might be fumes and that's what caused them to pass out. Well, that's good for the fire department and the paramedics to know, because as they're rolling to your location, they can put on gas masks or whatever protective equipment they have to protect them so they can help whoever needs help, right? And even though the fire department has a fantastic response time, like I said, of average of 4 minutes, you can improve that, right? You can improve that by, tell you, our fire crews, they know this city really, their cities really well, and they've probably been to the building that you're calling from. But they don't know precisely where the emergency is, what corner office the person is in. So if somebody can meet the crew at the street and escort them in so they know precisely where they're going, they don't have to waste time looking or wondering or wandering to the wrong location, right? So anything that we can do to improve the odds, and that's one of them, okay? But the reason that I have these other phone numbers on there for you is when you call 911 from a cell phone, and I'm not saying don't call 911, whatever you do, call. And don't even doubt yourself when you're calling. But if you call from a cell phone, like I said, you could be anywhere. And the dispatch that answers may not be in the city that you're calling from. It might be Redwood City, Oakland, Sacramento, depending on how busy 911 lines are, okay? So if you're calling from a cell phone, again, it's very important that you tell them what city you're calling from so they can immediately connect you to that city's dispatch and get that city's emergency personnel rolling. So again, always tell them what city first and what type of emergency. If you know for certain what city you are in, you can call the non-emergency line. Those phone numbers are there on the screen. If you call the non-emergency line, that will take you to the dispatch for your city. But you must be sure that you're in Belmont, Foster City, or San Mateo. Okay, but if you're sure, that just saves another second because then you're right in the city where you need them. Okay, so that's just information for you. Another thing about 911 is they've just, here in San Mateo County, you can text 911. If you're in a situation perhaps where you can't talk out loud, you can text 911. Again, be brief, be specific, give the address, location, be very specific. You're not sending a whole bunch of, War and Peace, but that's always good. Let's talk a little bit about fires. It says here, extinguish small fires, take on small fires. Generally, I'm always the one saying, if there's a fire, get everybody out and call 911. That's what you want to do first. But if the fire is still small, you might be able to attack it using a fire extinguisher. Let's talk a little bit about fire extinguishers. So this is a common fire extinguisher. They're so readily available and the price has really dropped. I know that they're online. You can get them at Costco, Amazon, but the most common house fire extinguisher is called an ABC fire extinguisher. Fires are categorized into different types, A, B, C, D, and K. And that means that the chemical inside of them addresses particular types of fires. Okay, whether it be electrical or a kitchen fire or just a standard, wood and fabric type of fire. So A, B, C, those categories of fires are normally what happens in a home, which is why an ABC fire extinguisher is the one that we would have in our homes. Okay. Where do you keep them? People ask me. Hold on. Where do you keep them? You want to keep them accessible. If it's under the sink in the kitchen with all the other stuff, it's not going to be handy when you need it in an emergency. Number one location for house fires, start in the kitchen. So maybe you want to, they have these clamps that you can put on, by the door. You want to have an escape route behind you, keep the fire in front of you so you can get out. But also let's talk about what's a small fire, what's considered small, right? If you have a fire extinguisher of this size, that's going to last you about 10 to 12 seconds. Okay, once you start squeezing the trigger. So they're very powerful and they do a great job, but they're made for small fires. So the definition of a small fire is, hold on, about the size of a standard office waste paper basket, okay? If the fire is bigger than that, it's starting to spread, get out. Get yourself out, get everybody evacuated, call 911, call 911 even if it's small, call 911. All right, any questions so far, just out of curiosity? I'm looking at the chat box, so we're good. All right. So I wanted to ask you guys some questions. So let's do a poll. The polls are anonymous. And you can pick more than one answer. What are the hazards that most concern you in your community? This is where you can plug in. Can you see the poll? I see you guys are answering. Thank you. And yes, you can answer. You can pick more than one if that's your concern. So a few more seconds. Let everybody give it some thought. What are the concerns that you most have? All right. And we're going to wrap it up. So last chance to get your thoughts in. What are the hazards most concerning to you? Let's wrap it up. So earthquake, 100%. Yes, earthquake by far, very common. The the greatest concern when it comes to hazards. Flooding only got 17%, and that's fine. But what's funny is that, or not funny, is that flooding is the most common disaster nationwide. It happens no matter where you are, where you live. Flooding will impact your area or could impact your area. Home fires, of course, wildfires, sea level rise. We live right on the bay, right? Power outages, of course, and storms. Yeah, so thank you very much. Really appreciate your participating in that. All right. In some of the information that I'm going to be emailing to you in the next few days, there'll be some talk about fire evacuation plans, evacuation planning, and family disaster planning. And that'll help you with that. But these are, again, we saw how those kids reacted, and that's because they practiced. And I know it's a pain. And I've been in offices where we've had an evacuation drill. Many times if you work in a building, a high-rise building or a building of any size, there'll be an evacuation drill where you leave. You obviously can't take the elevator. You have to go down the back stairs. And maybe your group or your floor will meet in a particular part of the parking lot, right? And it's important to know these things. I know you're in the middle of a meeting, you've got a report to do, but you're not going to have that muscle memory if you never practice it. And once we start getting back into our offices, it might be time to have another one of these drills. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what would be included in a family emergency plan, right? Evacuation routes. You always drive home the same way? Do you know more than one way in or out of your neighborhood? What if a telephone pole fell across your main route, right? Or for some reason that route's blocked. It's always nice to have a second option. So next time you're driving home, take a different route, check it out, see what it is. Family meetup locations. If you had to evacuate your home in a fire, and with a fire, by the way, or any time of evacuation out of your home, the 2 ways in and out is the same for everything. So you want 2 ways out of every room, 2 ways out of your home, and 2 ways out of your neighborhood. Okay, so out of your room, 2 ways. If you close your eyes and you think about your bedroom, you might be there now, but if you're thinking about your bedroom, what are the 2 ways out of your bedroom? The door is one. The window is a likely second. So if you're talking with younger kids, they may not want to go out the window because they've been told, don't go out the window, right? But if it's an emergency, and this is when you start talking about what an emergency is and under what circumstances, they may have to use the window. So if people are going out the second floor window and around the side door and behind the back gate or whatever, how do you know if everybody got out? Because remember, it's going to be smoky, loud. The fire department's coming in with their alarms. It's going to be chaotic. So you want a meeting place, someplace that's always there. The front tree, the tree in front of somebody else's house next door, whatever it may be. You pick it, let everybody in the family know so they all know to go there, so that when the fire trucks roll up, you can say, everyone's here, everyone's out of the house. Or we're missing Bobby, and the last time we saw him was in the back corner bedroom. So now they have a goal, they know exactly where they're going. All right? So practice evacuating your home. Family meetup locations. And then plan for pets, of course. Plan for people with mobility issues. Now, when we think of somebody with mobility issues, we may think of somebody who's perhaps older, who maybe uses a walker or a wheelchair. But your family dynamic can change from time to time. What if somebody has surgery? What if somebody went, skiing and, oh gosh, broke a leg? You always see the kids after winter break, right, on crutches. So now that has changed the dynamic on how it will be possible for that person to evacuate if they needed to. It's just good to be aware who might need extra help, who might need extra room in the car, that sort of thing. All right. And my favorite on this page is the out-of-state contact. Easy to do and massively impactful in your life when it comes to communication in a disaster. Remember that communications always seem to be the one thing that fall apart in a disaster. Imagine a wildfire or imagine an earthquake. Cell phone towers might be down, phone lines might be down. Everyone's on their phone. Everyone's calling each other in the area to see how they are, to check in on them. Well, the bandwidth on our cell phones, it's going to go to nothing. So a voice call is not going to go through the way we are accustomed to them going through. Okay, so a few things we can do, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but the out-of-state contact option is really crucial here because local calls, very hard to get through, but long distance calls, better odds, right? Because you're calling out, you're using a different, line, if you will. So I have a brother in Arizona. All my family knows to call my brother if something happens. And then he is getting all the calls. So when I call, he'll say, oh, I heard from your husband, I heard from your daughter, and they're fine, and this is where they are, right? And then the next time they call, he'll be able to tell them, Sandra called, she's at work, and she's gonna stay there, or she went to, Judy's house, whatever the case may be. These are all great ways of being able to get information in a relatively timely way, which lowers the temperature, calms everybody down because now you've heard from people. After Loma Prieta in '89, when no one had cell phones, even with landlines, it was very difficult to get communication. So it took about 5.5 hours just to find out that we've heard from everybody in the family. So we were able to at least sleep well that night, knowing that everybody had been accounted for. So that's what we're trying to do. So direct communication, I know, is much more satisfying, but the out-of-state contact or out-of-area contact is incredibly helpful and very effective. And it's something that's easy to set up, just so long as everyone knows who that out-of-state contact or out-of-area contact is, so everybody's calling the same person. Make sure it's somebody who answers their phone, and make sure they know that they are the out-of-state contact, and you might be that for them as well. All right. Here's what we talked about with the two ways out of every room, 2 ways out of your home, having a meeting place. This is something that you can easily, diagram, and it helps to visually see it, whether you live in a house or whether you live in an apartment complex. Visually seeing it, running through it a couple of times, very helpful for yourself as well as for all of your family members. Okay, so the communications plan, right? We talked about the out-of-state contact. Other options for yourself. If we can't get through, and you'll probably get through to somebody's voicemail, so why not change your outgoing voice message to say, hey, this is Sandra, we just had an earthquake, I'm fine, I'm at the office and I'm staying here. I've not given out any personal information. My loved ones will have reached that information, understand what's happening, and feel better because they know where I am and that I'm okay, right? So that's the outgoing message. That it's very helpful. your social media, right? You can change your status from dating to safe. People might be able to reach your Facebook or your Twitter account and see that. But if you update it, they'll at least get some information. Again, be broad in what you say, so it's not personal, but it gives people something to calm themselves with. Check in with your school. I know now, a lot of the kids are doing remote learning, but eventually that's going to change. So check in with your school and see what their emergency plans are, right? If you know what the plan is, if they would evacuate to the football field, for example, or whatever, and that they have a plan to stay with the kids until everyone's picked up, and you are across the bay, you know that you don't have to rush to get there. You know that there's a plan in place. So you should know what that plan is. Okay. We've talked about the 2 routes. Remember that you may not be able to take your car. So can you walk out? Can you bike out? All right. And then having that place to meet so that you can, check off that everybody's there. All right. And again, so what does planning and pre-planning do? It lowers the stress. It really helps make clear decisions. You can, talk with your kids, talk about what to expect, what's normal. The possibility of being separated. If they're at school and you're at work, it may take a day or so before you get back together again. So that's okay. Mom and dad will be there. Mom will come for you. Don't worry, right? Stay with your teacher, stay with your group, and know that we will come for you, right? And as long as you know what the school plan is, that will help you. All right. So here's something that I really wanted to share with you. We talked about evacuations, and this is something that's new, that is more information, more resources for you. It's called Zone Haven, and we are active with it right now in San Mateo County. You're going to start hearing more about this in the days and the weeks and months ahead. The line is Know Your Zone. San Mateo County and most counties in the Bay Area and eventually all of California have been divided up into zones. And so when you receive an evacuation message, for example, in the past, the evacuation message might be something like, we're evacuating everybody northeast of, Hillsdale and southwest. I'm sorry, I don't know my north from south. That's not easy for me to understand. But if they say they're evacuating, zone SM005, and that's where I happen to live, then I know I've got to, evacuate. That's my zone. So everyone can look up their zone, and I would put it on my fridge, and I'd, do that for all my family members. And the way you look it up is myzone.zonehaven.com. The website is there. And yes, I will send this to you as well. But Zone Haven is a fantastic new program that we have, like I said, throughout San Mateo County, throughout the Bay Area, and eventually more of California counties will be involved. It also provides all of our first responders with the same maps. They know which zones are which, so they can call for evacuations or perhaps a shelter in place, whatever the case may be. They can do it by zone, so it's much more user-friendly. Everybody understands each other, same communication. So please tell your friends and look up your zone and know your zone. All right. Something else to know is where your utilities are located. Okay, your gas, your water, your electricity, and how and under what circumstances to turn them off. So this is a picture of a prop, actually. It's not a real gas main, but if you see where the wrench is located, that's the valve that goes into the ground, and that's where your natural gas comes from. So this could be just outside your house, maybe a little bit further outside your house. The main part of the gas main, that big bulky part, in my house, for example, that big bulky part is on the inside of the garage, but the valve where the man has the wrench on it is on the outside. Okay, so if you look in your house, go walking around, take a look, find and locate the valve. The valve will be in line with the pipe. So if it's coming right out of the ground, it's up and down. It might even be sideways, so it'll be in line with the pipe. In line with the pipe means that the gas is on and it's flowing, right? If you turn it a quarter turn so that it crosses the pipe, that turns it off. So think of it as blocking the gas, okay? Blocking the gas, only a quarter turn. Do not practice this, please, because once you turn off the gas, you can't turn it back on again. Under what circumstances would you turn off the gas? Any thoughts on that? You guys can unmute yourselves if you want to just holler out an answer.
When you smell gas.
When you smell gas. Excellent answer. Any other thoughts? How about after an earthquake? Do you shut off the gas after an earthquake? The smell gas part was the right answer, in that you have a tool that's with you at all times, right here on your face. If you smell gas, it doesn't mean automatically turn it off, but it does mean investigate. Some years back, we had a lightning storm. We were home, it was night. It was, of course, raining. And lightning, my house just lit up. It was like, that's a direct hit. Oh my God. So we ran out and we started looking through the house. My husband on the outside, I'm on the inside. He eventually gets to the garage. He calls me over there and I walk into the garage and I could smell gas, but I could also hear it. A small hole. The lightning had struck nearby and it popped up into the pipe, popped a hole into the pipe, and gas was spewing out of there. So I could see it. I could see the vapor. I could smell it and I could hear it, right? That gas was getting shut off. So we opened all the doors, we evacuated the kids and the dog, we called 911 from outside, and my husband was able to shut off the gas. So PG&E and the fire department both responded very quickly, confirmed that everything was off and safe, and PG&E came out the next day to turn on our gas. So once you turn it off, you leave it off. But be sure you have a reason to shutting it off, okay? There are several tools that you can use. The wrench is one, but are you gonna find that wrench after an earthquake or when you need it, of course. These are called gas shut-off tools. They're available at any hardware store. This one currently runs about $3 or $4. This one runs about $8. This one also has a little part here on the bottom for your water, for shutting off water. And this hook is, if you know where the water is outside your house, usually it's underneath a cement kind of oval shaped cover with a little hole in it, and this helps you lift that out of it. So either one of these or the wrench, whatever works. Some people like to tie these to the gas main or chain them there so they're there all the time and handy should you ever need to shut off your gas. Okay. But as I said, once you shut off your gas, you do not turn it on again. You must have a professional from the utility company, and in our area, that's PG&E. Okay. So are there any questions right now? Don't be shy. Anything you thought of that maybe I either covered too fast or didn't get to? All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break. Got to get myself some water. You guys, whatever you need to do, we're going to keep it honest. We're going to stay with 2 minutes and then come back. So I'm setting my timer for 2 minutes. Ready? Go. See you guys in a bit. All right, let's start heading back into our seats. There's the alarm. All right. So do you think of any questions? By all means, let me know if you have any questions. Don't be shy. How are we doing on time? All right. So I've got some more great information for you. Hopefully you'll find this helpful to you. Now, PSPS is something that you might already be familiar with, right? It's something that is a fairly new alert from the utility companies, public safety power shutoff. This is something that was that came out of the wildfires, and all the utility companies in California, so PG&E, Southern Edison, San Diego, all of them came to the agreement that they would use PSPS, meaning they would shut off under certain circumstances, under certain weather conditions, they would shut off the power in a particular area so that their equipment would not cause any sparking and therefore possibly start a wildfire. Now, of course, this means a great inconvenience to people whose power is out. But it has to be under very specific circumstances. In general, it is very dry, low humidity. High winds are expected, and a lot of fuel, dry grasses, trees, that sort of thing. It isn't necessarily something that just happens over there in the wildland areas. It can affect us here. Here in San Mateo, I know in San Bruno, there have been cases where people have been out of power due to a PSPS for 3 days. So they have to shut off the power just before the wind storm begins. They have to keep it off for the duration of the storm. And then after the storm passes, they have to visually inspect the lines and make any repairs that need to be made. And then once all that is taken care of, then they can start turning on the power again. So there is a risk of being out of power for some time. The advantage, if you will, of a PSPS is that you will get notified 48 and 24 hours in advance. So you have time to make a plan. If there's a storm and your power goes out, then we don't have any warning. So again, power outages are real and we need to be able to deal with them no matter what circumstance they may come in. So please plan on the possibility of being out of power for several days. The Prepare for Power Down website is one site of many that you can check out, but that's one that was designed by the utility companies. Your refrigerator is the biggie, right? You want to keep things cool, keep it closed. If you're opening and closing the door to the refrigerator, you're lowering the temperature of your fridge. Another tip that I have for you is keep a few bottles of water frozen in your freezer. So if you take like a 2-liter bottle after you finished whatever was in it, rinse it out, fill it up almost all the way, but leave some space because ice expands. Shut them nice and tight, put them in the fridge, and then they'll freeze. If you lose power for any reason, you can take those ice cold frozen bottles, put them in your refrigerator, keeping your fridge cooler for a longer time. Okay, it's not going to be for a few days, but at least for a longer time, because generally we can deal with power outages for a few hours. Then we have to do a little bit more emergency things. But the biggie here is knowing how to manually open your garage door. If you have an electric garage door opener, it isn't going to work during a power outage, right? So they have a manual override. Test it out, try it out. Make sure you know how to use it and that you can physically open your garage door, because sometimes they're way too heavy. Knowing that means it's good information to know, right? Because then you can plan. Say, okay, make a deal with your neighbor. I'll help you open yours, you help me open mine. We'll make this through together, okay? All right, what are some of the things that run on electricity? And I put my favorite up at the top, traffic lights. So when there is a PSPS or a power outage in your area, it is very likely the traffic lights won't work. And we all know how well everyone drives when the traffic lights don't work. ATMs, you won't be able to get cash. Your grocery store is not going to be able to check you out because the power's out and nothing is working. Pumping gas will not be possible because gasoline pumps work on electricity. So all these things that run on electricity, and if you have any medical devices that run on battery or electricity or need to be charged, you should have a backup plan, whether that be another battery to get you through at least 8 hours, and then with the plan that you'll have to go to someone else's home or somebody who's either out of the area that still has power where you can charge your devices. Okay, so putting some thought into this, making a plan, having extra chargers, having extra batteries, keeping your gas tank at a quarter or a half a tank. My mom always said, half a tank is mine, a half a tank belongs to the car. At a half a tank, you're on empty. And when I started working for the fire department, that's the same rule here. So all of the fire department vehicles at a half a tank must be filled up again. So never below half a tank. Just so that you have options, right? You want to keep your options as open as possible. Smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, fantastic tools. They give you more time to escape. You want to make sure that you have them handy. The new smoke detectors are 10-year smoke detectors, which means you don't have to change the batteries in them all the time or once a year even. 10 years, they last 10 years. But you do have to test them once a month, just like normal, but you don't have to change the battery. Taking the battery out of a smoke alarm because you burnt the toast just leaves you with a very nice piece of plastic on your wall. This tool only works if it's properly set up. So if you have the type that you can take the battery out of, maybe the kitchen is not the best location. It is the dinner's ready bell in my house. But if you take it and put it just outside the kitchen, it'll minimize it going off for smaller things and possibly save your life later. So think about where you put them, but you certainly want to have working smoke alarms in your home. All right. Let's talk a little bit about our air quality. This was September 9th of last year when we woke up to that dystopian red day. That was really weird. But that certainly made us aware of our air quality. And the wildfires were the first times we were using masks a couple of years ago was due to the wildfires, right? So having tools to check our air quality is also important for ourselves. So I wanted to introduce you to the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. It rolls off the tongue. However, you can check and it'll give you, there's a lot of resources on this website. And among them is, air quality, air pollutants, that sort of thing. So it's important that, that you at least be familiar with it. That's the website right there. If you want to write it down, take some time to take a look at the different resources that are available to you on this website. Again, tools, good information there for you. Yasmin, you were asking about CO2. Yes, a lot of people believe that the CO, carbon monoxide detectors can be plugged in on the lower. That's fine if you want to plug them in lower because carbon monoxide is a bit heavier. But many of the smoke alarms, by the way, smoke detectors, also have built-in CO, so they've found that it works effectively almost no matter where. But if you have specifically a CO detector, plugging them in on your one of your plugs on the lower level is perfectly fine. Yeah, I went over this with my fire marshal, but they've been very effective. So thank you. Community resources. So we wanted to make sure that, again, we have as many options as possible. Getting to know your neighbors. You don't have to be nosy, but it's nice to know, who's home during the day, who's home, maybe works nights, maybe somebody, you probably have, everybody has skills of some sort. Maybe you're a great cook or you're good with your hands. You have tools and you know how to use them. You're a contractor, you're an EMT, you have medical training. whatever skills you have, you are an asset to your community, and knowing who else is an asset in your community works well together. So being familiar with your neighbors is a big important part of being more resilient in the bigger picture. Consider CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team. Have any of you heard of CERT? It's a great group. Yes? Thank you. So CERT is a nationwide, in fact, internationally existing program which trains residents just like you in emergency response and emergency preparedness. So much of what we're covering today, we go much more in depth with CERT. We actually learn how to use a fire extinguisher. We learn how to do light search and rescue. We learn how to do emergency first aid. We talk about all these things, preparing yourself, preparing your workplace, and your pets and everything. It covers a lot. It is a free training that we offer here by the San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department. We are currently in process of one class of students, your neighbors who are taking CERT. It is an 8-week course of study, but it is a really great service. We have over 800 active members in our 3 cities, and thousands have gone through the course. So it's really nice to know that we have neighbors like yourselves who are taking initiative when it comes to preparedness. This is a little bit of our from our CERT teams. Like I said, they learn how to use a fire extinguisher, get to practice that. The course ends on a skills day where we actually practice all the things we've learned. So on the right-hand side is some folks who've just completed their skills day and are quite pleased with themselves, as they should be. All right. Let's talk a little bit about sheltering. And we've heard the term shelter in place quite a bit now. We're much more familiar with it than we were before. But sheltering in place, or usually has to do with the fact that whatever is not good for us is out there. So when we're being urged during the wildfires to shelter in place because the air was bad, the air is out there. Close all your windows, close all your doors, seal yourself in to protect yourself from the bad air. You'll also hear shelter in place with law enforcement. If they're searching for a bad guy, then they want you to shut your doors and lock your windows and stay safe indoors, right? But after an earthquake or after some sort of a major regional disaster, we may ask people to shelter in place. There may be a time when you have to shelter for some time. And then there's, of course, the community shelters, the shelters set up after an emergency. Anytime that it's possible to stay at home, your home is usually the most comfortable place for you, right? You know where everything is, you know what you've got. Even if you have to camp out in the backyard, you're usually more comfortable at home. And by the way, if you have camping supplies, that's half your emergency kit right there, right? So you don't have to go out and buy a whole bunch of new stuff because you've got camping equipment. But you should be prepared. Again, you want to be flexible and have as many options as possible. And if you have to evacuate, usually what happens is when we ask a neighborhood to evacuate, and we've had recent evacuations in our area, right? We had the San Juan Canyon fire in Belmont. I believe that was last September. And last October, there was the Sign Hill fire known as the Diamond Fire in South San Francisco. Both of those required several homes and blocks to be evacuated. Fortunately, there wasn't any damage. The fires were stopped. They brought in air tankers. It was really exciting, but very scary. And in both those cases, they opened up what's called a temporary evacuation point. And residents were able to go there for a bit, relax, get some information, maybe water or snack or two until it was safe to return to your home. So if it's something that we hope will be short term, which in both those cases it was, you'll be able to return home that same night. But what happens when you have to evacuate like that? So that's what the go bag concept is. A go bag is a small backpack maybe for each person in your home, something each of them can carry, okay? And you just want to be able to grab it and go bag. keep it in your trunk, keep it in the closet by the front door. Each of the kids can have one in their room, but if they have to leave immediately, grab and go. So that has, crucial things that are a comfort to you. Now, often people will ask me about the backpacks that you can buy. Often you'll see those emergency backpacks that are like 3 days worth of stuff for 2 people. And they are terrific. And they have food and they have water and they have all kinds of nifty gadgets and tools and, space blankets and great stuff. Love them. But people buy them, throw them in the closet, and they say, I'm prepared. Okay. That's great. They are terrific. But every kit you have, whether it be a first aid kit or a go bag or your emergency kit at home, whatever it is, it should be customized to you. Okay. I wear prescription eyeglasses. Whenever I get a new pair of glasses, I take my old pair, put them in the case, and I put that in my go bag. Because of course, the one thing that's going to happen is my glasses are going to fall off my face and break, which would be pretty bad for me. So again, what is it you need? What is it your kids need? Their favorite toy or their favorite, a picture of the family, a book, something to entertain them with, right? As well as a change of clothes. And if you have any food sensitivities of any type, make sure you have a few bars, granola bars, power bars, whatever, in that go bag that you can eat. Because trust me, at a shelter, if something's set up, they are going to be limited to, one item on the menu, whatever it is that they get. So it may not fit your dietary needs. Medicine. Pharmacies are not going to be available and open, and the supply is not going to be as easy. So you want 7 days of whatever medicine that you take on a daily basis available to you. So think about these things, and you should and everybody says, well, where do I keep all this? Keep some supplies, some level of supply in places that you tend to hang out the most. Home, obviously, you'll be able to have your big kit with, your pantry, your food, your water storage, whatever the case may be. Foods that you like, foods that your kids like, whatever is going to give you some comfort. Important to have some comfort. I like wet wipes. This is even pre-COVID. I always had wet wipes in my bags, whatever it was that I was having. I grabbed a bag out of my car. I do keep stuff in my car. So this is a duffel bag. This was my gym bag. Obviously, I haven't been to the gym in a while. But this has got some extra stuff in it. So let's take a quick look and see what I've got. Pair of shoes, right? I don't want to be running around in heels if I'm in an emergency. First aid kit. Eye protection. There isn't a right or wrong. This is just stuff that I have. Sunscreen. Bandana, very handy nowadays. I also have a change of clothes. I'm not pulling that out. Some more first aid supplies. This is I'm not endorsing any particular brand. Many brands make this, but this is called a Life Straw. It's a filter, so I can actually drink out of a pond if I had to, and it would filter the water and it would be drinkable. So it's a nice option. So this is just one of my bags. I have several in my car. I have flashlights and all the good stuff, but you want things that are going to make you comfortable. So think about what makes you comfortable and have a couple of things like that. I do have the wet wipes in there, by the way. That's what's going to be handy for you. And if my colleague Casey would always be yelling at me about garbage bags. You want to make sure you have garbage bags because garbage bags are easy to pack into almost anything, right? You can fold them up, but they can be a waterproof, poncho. You can carry stuff in it. It's good for sanitation, all kinds of things. And then people do ask me all the time, where are the shelters going to be located? Shelters are going to be set up as needed in a place that is near but not in the middle of the disaster. So there's no way of knowing precisely where the shelters are going to be set up. Just know that your cities have taken steps to making sure that a shelter is prepared and that we have supplies for sheltering. But having you have a go bag, so if you had to run and if you had to stay at a shelter because you had nowhere else to stay, you'd have some of your creature comforts. You'd be able to take care of yourself. All right. And again, home is the #1 spot. And if you have camping supplies, great. Because if the house is not safe for some reason, at least you can stay home, but you're in a safe place, like your yard or something like that. All right. Think please about your pets, because pets generally are not admitted into shelters. Now, we happen to have the Peninsula Humane Society here in San Mateo County, and they do a terrific job. They have trained with us on sheltering needs, and we've gotten a lot of unfortunate experience with the wildfires and everything about having to evacuate pets and even livestock. So we've gotten considerably better at this, but don't assume that your pet will be able to stay with you in a shelter. It's very likely that they'll be at their own shelter, which may or may not be directly near you. So have some things for them, their pet food, their, a blanket that smells like you, a kennel, and make sure they're accustomed to being, in a crate, because they'll be much more comfortable in something that they're familiar with, even in crazy situations. Certainly their food will make them feel better and keep them from getting sick. You may not bring, Aunt Donna's famous cookies or your great, apple pie or something. You can't bring that with you to the shelter, unfortunately. Only commercially packaged foods, no glass, please, and no alcoholic beverages. But put something in your bag, again, deck of cards, whatever your favorite game is, a book, something to help you pass the time and make you feel a little bit more relaxed. Right? How will you hear about shelter notifications or any updates on whatever the emergency may be that we're experiencing? So here locally, we have a couple of options. If the TV is still working, channel 27 is the community TV station. How many of you are on SMC Alerts? SMC Alerts is for San Mateo County. Every county has its own alert messaging system. SMC Alert is ours. Now, I used to work in another county, and my husband was here in San Mateo County, so I had that county's alert system as well as San Mateo County's alert system. Again, information. You want to be able to get quality information as quickly as possible so you can use that as a tool to make the best decision for yourself and your family, right? And of course, local television and radio stations. Here's SMC Alert and how to register for it, smcalert.info. And you can customize it, which I really enjoy, because if you have, somebody in Pacifica and somebody in San Bruno and somebody in San Mateo and somebody in Foster City, you can click on those cities and receive alerts specific to those cities. If you have somebody who's away at college, most college campuses have an alerting and messaging system, which you as a parent or an aunt, a doting aunt, can sign on for and be aware of what's going on in their area. Okay, so alerting systems are really terrific. What does an SMC alert look like? So keep in mind that often they are sent out very quickly. They're trying to keep up ahead of whatever the disaster may be. And by the way, this is one of the main ways you're going to get alerted if something's happening in your zone, which is why it's important to know your zone. So they're going to start saying things like, this is impacting zone 7 and 25 or whatever. So you know if it's affecting your area specifically. But anyway, they're going to come out fast. Sometimes they may have typos. They're limited in terms of how many characters they can send out at once. So they do try to include links and that type of information. But it'll tell you, they'll send out things like, if a tree is down and a roadway is blocked and not usable, if there's a police action to please stay out of the area or to shelter in place, if there's a high wind warning, or where you can get sandbags if there's big rains coming, that type of thing. All right. So let's talk a little bit about other things that you can put either in your go bag or to have handy or prepared. This takes a little bit more work, but it's certainly very valuable, because keep in mind, if you remember 2017 and the Santa Rosa fire, those people 3 years later are still in the process of rebuilding and recovering. They are not recovered, they are recovering. And they're still, in process of getting back to whatever normal might be for them. Okay. How much easier would that process be if you had all of your paperwork and all your documentation and your insurance and birth and death certificates and anything else that you might need, your credit cards, of course. Okay. But if you had to leave your house quickly, or you weren't home when your neighborhood had to evacuate, and if something were to happen to your home and everything is gone, how are you going to prove who you are? How are you going to be able to start the claims process with your insurance company? All the things that come with starting the process of recovery. Well, a brilliant way, now that we have the technology, is take pictures of everything, right? Credit cards, birth and death certificates, mortgages, rent agreements, insurance policies, all those things, and save them onto like a thumb drive, a flash drive, and keep that somewhere else, not in your home, somewhere safe, a safe deposit box, the drawer of a trusted relative, somewhere else. It's accessible. You could eventually get to it, and everything is there. So even if you lost everything in a fire or whatever that came through your neighborhood, you can still get those numbers, get access to it, and start that process so much more easily than if you had to start from zero. So that's one of the big things that we recommend. It takes a little time, but certainly worth it in the heartache that you will be saving. Okay. Here's a small go bag. It's actually sort of like the waist pouches that people can wear. It's not that big, and look at everything that's packed into it. And again, you want to customize it. So you still want to put in stuff that is important to you. Maybe, like I said, a granola bar that you can eat. Some cash is always a good idea. All right. So emergency supplies. So how long do you want to be ready for? We used to always say 3 days, 72 hours. Now we're talking a week. We think that a week is a more realistic and safe option. And you want to talk about, having water. Almost every disaster that I've ever heard of, with the exception of this pandemic, has had some impact on water, drinking water at some time. So we talk about water storage and how much water to have on hand. The recommendation, the minimum is 1 gallon of water per person per day. So here's the gallon of water, right? So is this going to be enough for you for today? For your coffee in the morning, washing your face, brushing your teeth, bathing if you did, drinking? Is this enough for you for one day? That's up to you. There's no right or wrong, but they say a minimum of 1 gallon per person per day is what you want to have on hand. If you have pets, plan on having extra water for them as well. All right. Remember the special diets we talked about, right? You're not always going to have options when you go to a shelter or in an emergency. Restaurants are going to be down. It's not going to be as easy as it is normally to get what you like to eat. So having some items, in your trunk or in your go bag or in your emergency kit is very helpful. Cash and change. All right, let's go back to our water. Let's say we're a few days into the disaster, whatever it is, and you've done a good job about using your water, but now you're getting low and you want to have some more water on hand. And I happen to have some extra water, and I'm nice. I'm going to sell you this gallon of water for $2. That's a deal, right? $2 in an emergency, that's fine. All you have is a $20 bill. I'm not giving you my change. So you've just paid $20 for a $2 bottle of water. Okay, supply and demand. So options, flexibility, carry small bills, 5s and 1s, right? How much? It's up to you. What is your usual daily spending routine like? And again, you don't have to carry it all in your go bag on your person, right? You have to have it accessible. So have an envelope with small denominations of cash wherever you keep your thumb drive, right? Keep it someplace else, someplace safe that you can eventually get to after a couple of days, and have that option. Again, it gives you more flexibility and more options. Masks and face covering, hand sanitizer, it's all part of our emergency kits now, right? So have extra masks and extra hand sanitizer in every kit that you have. But also think about what's going to make you safe and comfortable. Having work gloves or having tools, having sturdy shoes, right? So keep yourself physically safe. If you're going to start, digging out something that may have, if a shed collapsed and you're trying to get to something underneath it, please put on some work gloves and long pants and don't be in flip-flops when you're doing it. All right. There are the trash bags. Casey will be so happy. So, trash bags, really, really great. Having trash cans, especially with tops on them. If you have a clean, brand new trash can, for example, the rolling type, they make a great emergency kit. You can, put a whole bunch of supplies in there and roll it off, put it in the back of a pickup truck if you need to, or roll it up to a park or a parking lot where people have set up an evacuation center, whatever. You have some options, right? And so that's one of them. Household bleach, not only for sanitizing but also for purifying water, is a great source. So a lot of good options. Again, you want to be able to have some tools, have some cooking supplies. City map, that's something I have. Hard copies of maps. Your phone may not be working. The internet may be down. You're not going to be able to use GPS. So having some local maps in a couple of your kits is very helpful. All right. And keep something basic wherever it is that you tend to spend time. All right. Any questions? How are we doing? Okay. So what about when the disaster happens someplace else? I don't know if you've been keeping tabs on the news and what's happening in Texas, but it's just devastating. I wish there was something that I could do. Right now, nothing, but there will be needs soon. So keep an eye on that. But what happens when the disaster happens somewhere else? And we, being wonderful humans, want, have our hearts broken, we want to help. What do we do? Do we send clothes? Do we send water? What is the key to helping people when the disaster happens somewhere else? Well, a lot of times you'll get a lot of groups who have wonderful big hearts and they're collecting stuff and they fill up a truck, and maybe the trucker donated, the truck and his or her time, and they're driving it to wherever the case may be, such as the Camp Fire or the Santa Rosa fire, wherever the case was that the incident was happening, or maybe one of the hurricane struck areas. Any disaster, there's a couple of things that are always in short supply. Personnel. Everyone's focused on the disaster, so everyone's trying to figure out how to stop the fire, shut off the gas main leak, push back the water, whatever it may be. Right? All the personnel is focused on the disaster and stopping it. And then space. There's no space because you're either sheltering people or you're sheltering first responders who are coming from out of the area to assist in the area. So space and personnel are always in short supply. Okay? If you send stuff, this is what we hope will happen. We're going to send stuff over to this place, and someone's going to open that bag or that box, and it's going to be exactly the right thing that they need in this devastating time. This is the reality. Okay? So now we have bags and boxes full of stuff. We don't know what's in all of these boxes and bags. So now we would need personnel to go through them, right? But we don't have personnel because they're focused on the disaster. And space, this ends up usually being, in a parking lot or something, because all the other spaces are taken up. So here now, all of this sits in the sun and the rain with nobody knowing what's in it, where it came from, if it's okay to use. And after a period of time, it technically becomes a hazardous waste. So now the local municipality has to hire a special team trained in hazardous waste disposal to clean it up and take it away. So now, instead of helping, we've cost the community money, space, and time that they don't have, right? So our hearts are in the right place, and I'm saying they need help. What can we do to be more effective in our assistance? From, who knows better than what you need than you in any given time? So finding a trusted disaster assistance charity that you trust, that you know, great. Another way is to send gift cards in smaller, $25 denominations. Because one of the first things that they do when a family or people come in and they're displaced is, find them a shelter of some sort, but also give them a gift card so they can buy some food or buy some clothes or buy diapers, whatever it is they need at that time. And the needs are going to change day to day, week to week. So again, give them that flexibility by, not taking up space and time, but giving them what they can use, because only they can determine what they need. All right. Now, like I said, water is an issue. Water is always there's going to usually be a boil water notice just in case after almost any disaster, because it does take a little time for the municipality to check their water source to be sure that it is safe to use. So having some water on hand is really, really important. So in terms of water storage, you might want to rotate it, once a year, but again, make this part of your routine. If you go to the grocery store, buy an extra case of water. Take the case you had before, use that water, and put the new case in, whenever you buy water. Keep in mind your medical needs. Again, only you know what those needs are. So where are you going to find things in an emergency? Remember, the pharmacies are not going to be open. Things aren't going to be working. So you want to have whatever medications, whatever supplements you take handy. You want to have at least a 7-day supply. It's going to take at least that time to get things ramped back up. Okay. People ask me about water storage systems, so I put in a few photos here. These are stackers or water bricks. They usually hold 2.5 to 3.5 gallons of water. So they're very portable, which is nice. You can stack them in a corner, in a closet. So if you don't have a lot of space, they don't take up too much space. Obviously, you can put them under the bed. And then you have the larger systems, the barrels of drinking water that you can do. But again, you will have to, trade them out about once a year. I think they can usually last 2 years, is what they normally would say. But once a year is a good rotation if you want to keep the water relatively fresh and not stale. All right. Other things you can do is, basic first aid, CPR training, make sure you have a first aid kit, all that good stuff, and look into things like CERT. If you've taken CPR in the past, you'll remember the ABCs, but like everything else, we learn from experience, and so now it's CAB, circulation being the most important, since it does process the oxygen through the body. But take a look at what's available. Now, currently, of course, we do teach CPR and first aid. We are currently not teaching them, but we're in the process of making them available in a hybrid class because you do have to have a hands-on component. So hopefully in the next couple of months, we will have CPR offered again. So please look for that in your Eventbrite. Like the way you signed up for today's class, it'll be the same way. All right. And then consider gifts. You know, I'm not always the most popular aunt, but I'm the one that really does want to make sure they're as safe as possible. So I'll give a first aid kit or a fire extinguisher or an emergency backpack to you know, the kids who are going away to college or family, as far as, you know, holiday and birthday gifts. So don't leave that out as a possibility. All right, so you've taken this class, and what do we do? What can we do to be better prepared than you were 2 hours ago? Right? So keeping the gas tank full. Again, it increases your options. Not only, right, to get out of town without having, you know, if you had to evacuate, you don't want to have to stop at the gas station. You want to be able to get out of town. Some of the terrible stories that I heard out of Santa Rosa and the campfire when people had to evacuate, with the wildfire coming down on them, burning both sides of the road. And of course, everyone's trying to evacuate. So it's not like you're, you know, 5 minutes and out. You're in bumper to bumper traffic. So what takes 5 minutes might take 45 minutes in an emergency. Everything takes longer. So when there's an option to evacuate, I prefer to go sooner rather than later. An hour makes a massive amount of difference in terms of how quickly you're able to get out of your area. But many stories of people, you know, being in this bumper to bumper traffic. It's dark now because the smoke is so thick. The fire's on either side of the highway. And some people are abandoning their cars because the cars are catching fire. So they're leaving their cars right in the middle of the road. So now we have more traffic to get around and accidents if people are banging into a car that's been stopped. So try not to get yourself into that situation. You don't want to be sitting there on fumes in, you know, bumper to bumper traffic. Okay. You know, pick up a case of water the next time you're in the grocery store. Know your zone, please. Learn your zone. It will be very handy and very helpful and make much more sense as we progress with the Zone Haven program. You'll start hearing know your zone more often, so start spreading it with your friends. Have portable chargers. One of the things in the bag actually is an extra charger. We love our devices, but they only work if we have the tools to help them work. You can develop that out-of-state contact. It takes one quick phone call or one quick email to somebody. Hey, you know, text, can you be my out-of-state contact? I'll be yours. So, you know, that sort of thing. Learn your school's emergency plan. Again, it'll help lower the temperature if you know what the plan is. And please consider registering with SMC Alert. All these are things that you can do either tonight or the next day. They're easy. They don't cost you anything. Wow, look at that. And you'll feel much better and you'll be much better prepared than you were at the beginning. All right. Just FYI for you, the next Get Ready class, if you have friends or family who speak Spanish, the next one will be in Spanish. It'll be next month on March 20th. That's a Saturday in the morning. The class is called Preparedness, and we'll have the registration up on March 1st on the Eventbrite site. There will be another Get Ready in English in April. I believe the date's the 14th, but we usually have the registration about 2 to 3 weeks in advance. So if you want to spread the word and help people out, that would be fantastic, and we always appreciate your help. Also, in the next few days, you're going to be getting an email from me, actually a survey from us asking us about this class, and your help is always appreciated if you take the time to fill out the survey just to give us an idea as to what works, what doesn't, so we can improve it. We do appreciate it, and we do take a look at those surveys all the time. Also, after that, I will be emailing you the information that you would have received if we were doing this class face-to-face, and it'll have some more information about water. It'll have some, you know, how to make a family plan, all kinds of good things. And eventually all of those resources, which are on our website now in English, are going to be there in multiple languages. We've just had a lot of those translated. We're very excited. It'll be in Spanish, obviously, for the class next month, but we'll also have them in Chinese, Tagalog, Tongan, Russian. So we have a lot going on and we're very excited. All right. Are there any questions? I know I covered a lot of information. So the most important thing, of course, is keeping the temperature down, giving yourselves as many options as possible, and knowing that it isn't something like you have to spend hundreds of dollars and take an entire weekend to be prepared. Take some steps gradually over time to get things in order. All right. So that's everything I have. Please, please enjoy the resources that are available to you. Don't hesitate to email if you have any questions, and look please for the survey and for the resources that I'll be emailing you to hopefully help you with your future preparedness plans. Thank you so much for the time that you've taken tonight, for helping us to become a culture of preparedness, if you will, build a culture of preparedness in our communities. I hope you're well and safe, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Have a great night. Be safe.
Thank you. That was great.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Have a great night.
Okay, you too.